Welcome, everyone. I have been looking forward to this interview for such a long time, and I think very quickly you're going to see why too. I would like to introduce to you Kylie Pinwill. Kylie is a clinical nutritionist, speaker, and host of the Hormone Hub podcast with over 20 years experience in the health and fitness industry. She works with women in their 40s, 50s, and beyond who are feeling lethargic, struggling with weight gain, bloating, and hot flushes to balance their hormones and reset their metabolism so they can feel happier and more confident in their skin. Kylie, welcome.
Hi, Kip. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
It's wonderful. I'm just so happy to have you here. Kylie, I know before we get into the work that you're doing now, you yourself had quite a challenging experience with your own thyroid and metabolism. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So it's interesting. So I didn't know, like I guess a lot of women, I didn't even know what my thyroid did. So this was before I was sort of in the health and fitness industry. Oh, no, I'd been in the fitness industry for a while then. But then when I was pregnant with my second son, I was diagnosed with a thyroid tumor. So it was one of those things, they didn't know if it was cancerous or not. And, you know, to tell a woman who's 6 months pregnant that she may or may not have a cancerous tumor, you know, it was pretty stressful at the time. So sort of fast forward, we had it out. It was benign, but then little did I know that that was kind of like the beginning of my metabolism issues. So it took a long time to get those, you know, the diagnosis right. It took a long time to get my medication right. You know, like now these days I'm totally off all of my thyroid meds. Because I found they weren't giving me the medication that matched the issue that I had. And, you know, I had to figure that out myself, which was crazy. And I think that was sort of what then triggered my whole journey to, you know, sort of specializing in women's hormones. Because what I found out was, you know, our thyroid is very closely connected to our adrenals, which are very closely connected to our sex hormones. So if one is out, like everything is out. So I, you know, was putting on weight. I was a fit, healthy person. I've always loved my food. I think I was a Labrador in a previous life. So if there's good food on offer, I'm there, and I, definitely have hand to mouth disease. Love a glass of wine. And it was just sort of like, I'd always been able to sort of manage that. And then all of a sudden I just couldn't. And I was exhausted, like I was crashing out on the lounge, and I put on about 10 kilos. So, 25 pounds, is that?
Yep.
Yeah, so like, but really quickly, and just my energy, was flatlined. I was losing hair. I was, probably not the nicest person to live with at the time. On reflection. But it took me ages. So I ended up getting my hormones. So I did all the things, I fasted. When I started running, I thought, right, I need to get back into the cardio. Like I was doing 10K runs and then coming home and having a sleep for 2 hours. So I had this mentality that we all kind of, I think everyone who sort of came through the 70s, 80s, 90s, we've all got this go hard, go home kind of mindset. And it just backfired, all of it. And then I finally sort of, took a step back, and because I was a qualified nutritionist at this point, I went, okay, we're always taught to look at what's the underlying drivers of this. It's not the eating, it's not the exercise, what's going on. So I had a look. I went and I actually did the salivary hormone test. My estrogen was sky high. My progesterone was so low. My thyroid markers, I made my doctor do all of my thyroid bloods. And I know in the US, as well as Australia, UK, New Zealand, doesn't matter where we are, trying to get the right thyroid markers is next to impossible. So I made my doctor do all of these things. So we sort of agreed on a plan. So yeah, my thyroid levels were way out. Estrogen was sky high. And so we decided, I had a marina at that point, and I just sort of said to my GP, I said, I would really like just to get rid of everything, and let's just start with a clean slate and sort of build up from there. So I went, so she didn't actually take the marina out. So, but there was another GP in her surgery that was his role. So I went to him, and after she and I had this great discussion and we had a plan together, he's just like, oh, you'll be back here in, 3 months' time begging me to put this back in. And I was like, I don't think I'll be begging you for anything, pal. And then, it was just this, oh no, I've worked with thousands of women and they all, I'll give you HRT while we're here. So here I am, estrogen dominant, which I knew, and he's giving me a script for synthetic estrogen, so loading more estrogen on top. And I'm just like, you haven't talked to me, we haven't had a conversation, you've just made the assumption that I'm a perimenopausal woman, so therefore one form of HRT, boom, tick. And I just at the time, I didn't get angry with him, but I got really angry on behalf of like women who trust their doctor. We're brought up to trust our doctors and trust what they say. And then probably for the first time in my life, I actually questioned a doctor. And I'm just like, actually, no, I'm not going to beg you for anything. I'm not going to just take this because you said I should. And I knew enough about it at that point to know that wasn't the right path. But I think that was sort of like the tipping point for me, was sort of like, okay, well, if that's how I'm treated, I'm sure there are like thousands, millions of other women being treated the same way, given the wrong medications. They're not being heard, they're not being listened to. So that was really sort of my turning point, I guess. So as for my own sort of stuff I had going on, I sorted it out. I started, looking after my liver. So we started clearing the estrogen. I started, supporting my body naturally of how I could, was I getting the right nutrients to support my progesterone levels, clear my estrogen, support my thyroid, and then also the lifestyle stuff to manage my stress and get my adrenals back, out of the toilet. So it was a journey. It was definitely a process, but it's when you realize the power, I think, of what you put in your body, the way you treat your body, the way you speak to yourself, actually we don't need, oftentimes, yeah, sure, 100% there's a time and a place for medication and support, most definitely, but there's so much we can control. And I don't think we're ever taught how to do that and how to look after ourselves properly, and it doesn't have to be a prescriptive diet or anything like that either.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Your story is so familiar, and I'm sure there are many, many women here on this masterclass that are nodding as I have been, because I didn't have a tumor, but my thyroid, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism around age 45, about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
My doctor couldn't tell me why it was happening, what had caused it. She put me on a synthetic thyroid medication and just told me, take this, you'll be on it the rest of your life. And that was it, like run along. And for a year I was in misery because the dose was either too high or too low. So I'd have to go back and have it recalibrated. And finally I just said, I can't do this. I'm just taking myself off it. And at the same time, she would tell me, she said to me, we don't believe adrenal fatigue is a thing. And yet I am like you. I felt like I needed to sleep around the clock. And there was one point where I thought, if the house was on fire, I couldn't get out of bed right now. And she also said that my sleep issues were in my head. So I did not feel supported by the medical profession in my community. So what can women do if they're not feeling that their doctors are giving them the health care that they need? And I think, would you say the women that you work with, do they know inside that it's not working somehow and they just haven't found what else they can do? What do you suggest to them? How do you help them?
I think like some women just come, they're just looking, they sort of know on some level that something's not right, and they might have been told, so they might have had their bloods done, and they might have been told, very often, I've heard this is very common, that, everything's normal. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, when we look at blood work, you know, it's done on, if we think of the bell curve that we all sort of used at school, and it's sort of this big bell curve. So this is normal. And also too, we only ever get blood work done when we're not feeling well. So the parameters and the average of normal is done on unwell people. So it's already skewed. But the levels are so wide, and they keep getting wider and wider. So if you're sitting on the outside of these normal levels and you feel like rubbish, you can still be normal, but you know, you're not optimal. So I always look for women, or tell women to sort of, you know, speak to sort of like a natural health care practitioner or someone who's versed in you know, definitely reading blood work. You don't want to diagnose yourself. We all do a lot of that too. But we want to be in that optimal range. So if you are well and you feel well and you're energetic and everything's working properly, it's because you're in that optimal range. And how often do we get told, if, you know, oh, it's a little bit low, but we'll just wait and see.
Yeah.
I'm like, what exactly are we waiting for? Are we waiting for it to go outside of that normal level, and then it becomes a diagnosable condition, and then they can, you know, give you the matching medication? And I think that's sort of very simplistically how the medical profession, you know, is for a lot of women, and that's their experience. So what we want to do is sort of have a look at where you're sitting, bring you into that optimal level. So we're supporting your hormones so you feel well. We're not waiting until it becomes so out of control that it's harder, because the further out of normal you are, the harder it is to come back. So that's sort of one thing. But I think, you know, and women tell me all the time, oh, you know, I've been to the doctor, I had the bloods done, you know, everything's normal. So I think I'm going crazy. I think it's in my head. But it's really not. Like, you know your body better than anyone else. And if you don't feel well and if you think something's off, there's a good chance it is off. And, you know, I really like to go through like the signs and the symptoms and actually listen to the woman sitting in front of me, because I think that's where we learn so much about, you know, what's going on, is actually listening. And I think a lot of women just aren't being heard.
Oh, definitely. I hear that a lot too. So you say often that it's not about getting a diet and exercise plan. So what's more important is figuring out what's going on with the hormones. Is that really the baseline for women?
Yeah, I think so, because you know, we're all looking for that magic answer, you know, and we've been trained, you know, that it's diet and exercise, you know, and at the end of the day, we all know what healthy eating looks like. Okay. So we may or may not do it in varying degrees, and we intuitively know if we're eating well or not. And we all try. So I don't think that's the issue. What we sort of want to do is sort of have a look at, because as our hormones start to change, so we hit, so perimenopause can kind of start anywhere, you know, up to 10 years before menopause. Okay, so this is where we get big surges and big drops in our hormones. And this is, you know, has a knock-on effect. It impacts the way we can digest our food. It can impact our energy levels, our, you know, so we get bloating for the first time, or constipation for the first time. We can have, you know, insomnia for the first time. We can have headaches or migraines for the first time. So we start to get all these strange little symptoms that add up. So what we want to do is sort of have a look at, you know, what's going on underneath. So how is our, you know, are we supporting our blood sugar? Because, you know, and this is where when I work with women, this is where we start, you know, let's get that blood sugar sorted, because, you know, every time we eat, you know, our body releases insulin, and then, you know, that insulin, you know, brings our blood sugar down. And what happens over time is our body can be less responsive to that. And particularly as we head towards menopause, you know, we lose that, you know, we become more sensitive to insulin, and insulin is one of our fat storage hormones. So that when we've got all this excess insulin, or it's taking our body becomes a little bit resistant, and it's taking a while to bring those insulin levels down, That sort of signaling our body to store body fat. So we really want to get on to getting those foundations right. So we're anchoring that blood sugar level, and then this has a knock-on effect to, mood, energy, how we feel within ourselves. So that's kind of where I start. Then, when we sort of have a look at, okay, well, how's your body functioning? Are you absorbing the nutrients from your food, and are you eliminating everything properly? Because we could have the world's most perfect diet. We could be taking all the supplements, on earth, but if we're not absorbing them, we're totally missing the mark. So if you've got bloating going on, constipation, diarrhea, reflux, heartburn, anything gassy, anything like that, it's a sign that your body's not absorbing the nutrients properly. So we want to jump in and address that. Then, are you pooping properly? Constipation, diarrhea, it's all a sign, really common in, women our age, but it's not normal. So we want to make sure that we're addressing that. So once we sort of get that digestion, happening properly, it's then we sort of want to move on. Okay, what's your detox pathways doing? And I always sort of use the analogy of a vacuum cleaner. So if you think of, if your vacuum cleaner filter is full, we can still sort of whip around the floor and it's still going to pick up little bits of stuff. Okay. So our liver is exactly the same. It's always going to work because it keeps us alive and protects us from, all the chemicals that go through our body. So, but if we sort of go and empty that vacuum cleaner filter out and go back to the vacuum, all of a sudden we're like, oh man, this is amazing. And, it's sucking up everything. And our liver kind of is a bit the same. So if we supporting it and if we give it, a bit of love, it does so much and we just give it nothing. So if we give it some love, and it doesn't mean that we have to go on some crazy detox or anything like that. It's just like, okay, well, what's the overall load that we're exposed to on a daily basis? How can we reduce the load that we put on our liver? But also at the same time, are we giving it the nutrients it needs to work properly? If you go on some lemon detox diet, you're not giving it the nutrients it needs. No. so we want to make sure. So it's twofold. So, we work through that blood sugar, we work through that digestion, we make sure that we're breaking down, when we sort of our liver breaks down toxins, but it also breaks down excess hormones and gets rid of them. It breaks down our cholesterol, that excess cholesterol. And that's why you sort of see these, all of a sudden women hit their mid to late 40s and their cholesterol goes through the roof. And, the GPs are like, medication. And I'm like, no, let's have a look at your liver and, let's support your liver. So, we get rid of it naturally. And then, the other sort of piece of the puzzle, which is so, so important, and I think kind of drives everything else, is stress. Because if we are running around in that constant fight or flight mode, our body is designed to keep us safe. So when we, you sort of think of that adrenaline rush, and it keeps us safe insofar as, like, if we're driving in the car and the car in front slams on its brake, like we got that automatic reflex to slam on the brake and that keeps us safe. Okay. But what happens is, when we've constantly got those stress hormones going on, this is where we sort of start to go, oh my God, we're not safe. So we need to hold on to body fat and let's just put it around our middle. We need to, like if we're in danger and we're running from a bear, we don't need to stop and poop. So our digestive system is going to jam. We don't need to stop and make a baby on our way from running from the bear. So our reproductive system, our libido just goes, boom, stop. So stress we don't need to have a nap. So stress kind of like influences like all these different systems in our body. And while we can't change the way we, change the amount of stress around us, so we don't have control over that, but we can change the way we respond to stress. And I think that is a really key piece as well. And it's just sort of like, how can we on a daily basis, and it doesn't mean we need massages and bubble baths all the time. It's just, can be as simple as like, how can we say no to something, and I think women also, we've got this extraordinary capacity to take on all of the things. So we say yes to things that we really don't want to. We just get on, we push through, we're exhausted, but we just push on and we do things, we do more, and we do what needs to be done. You know, and there's a lot of people pleasing going on there. So it's just like, how can we actually sit back a bit and say no and put ourselves first? And I think for a lot of women, that's a really bizarre and can be quite confronting as well. But actually, we need to sort of step up for ourselves and go, actually, I need to look after myself. You know, I need to look after my family unit, and then everything else can take a back seat.
Yeah.
So
you've hit on so many things in that, and absolutely. And you know, with respect to sleep, my pharmacist once said to me that she's seeing so many women in these middle years, and she described us as wired and tired, or tired and wired, exhausted all the time, but wired, like almost vibrating. And so sleep, I think sleep has been one of the biggest issues for me, and a lot of the women that I talked to said the same thing. And there are all kinds of websites or self-help sources that will talk about sleep hygiene, going to bed at the same time every night, removing technology from the bedroom, stopping watching television or looking at a screen at least an hour before bed, having a ritual. And I know those things are really good, but to me, they feel like it's very surface level. I do all those things. I'm very mindful about that, and it hasn't made a difference. So what can you tell us women who have chronic insomnia and are not getting the support from medical profession? What can we start to do to improve our sleep?
Yeah, definitely. And look, there's a few things that we can do. One, again, and it's really interesting sort of reading the study. So just to sort of step back a bit, like a lot of the research is done on men. Okay, it's because women have these fluctuating hormones, and it's really hard to get a standardized control over women's hormones, right? So a lot of the studies are done on men. However, there are studies coming out slowly on women, and what they're finding, so for that 2-3 a.m. You know, waking up time, is it can be that our blood sugar dips. So if we've had if we're on a standard Western diet where we might have, you know, cereal and toast and juice and coffee for breakfast, and then we have, you know, we want to be healthy for lunch, so we want to have a salad sandwich, and then we want to, you know, we come home, we're exhausted, so we just make some pasta for dinner, we might throw some salad or some veggies in there, we have a glass of wine, you know, so, and then after chocolate, you know, sitting on the lounge watching TV, who doesn't love a bit of chocky or a cookie? So, you know, our blood sugar's kind of done this big up and down all day. And then what we need to do is anchor our blood sugar. And I talk about like anchoring our blood sugar all the time, is anchor it before we go to bed. So if we've gone to bed and we've had, particularly for our late night snackers, you know, your blood sugar's gone up just before you've gone to bed. So at 2-3 in the morning, your blood sugar has dropped really low, and that's forced you to wake up. So by having dinner and including some healthy fats and some protein at dinner, but actually ideally at each meal through the day, so we get this sort of slow blood sugar rather than these big spikes and troughs. So, you know, and what I've found with my clients is having, a small amount of carbs. So ladies, if you're in your 40s or 50s, do not give up the carbs. And by carbs, I mean, you know, like think of plant-based carbs. So our potato for the love of potato, you know, our beautiful portion-sized, you know, nugget of fiber, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, you know, so much goodness. But you know, we need not the Idaho potatoes, ladies. We're talking little potatoes. But yeah, so protein, plant-based carbs, some healthy fats, you know, and that's going to keep our blood sugar more stable. So that's going to stop us waking up in the night. So that's sort of one thing you can do. And then for my ladies who have what I call that busy brain, you know, is we don't want to, because quite often we sort of get to sort of 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And for a lot of women, they'll get that second wind. And what we want to do is we want to go to bed before we get that second wind. So we want to be able to get into bed and be asleep, because the hours before midnight are really valuable, you know, in so far as that's our restorative sleep. So we really want to get that sleep in. But, you know, for my ladies who wake up at 2, 3 in the morning, and, you know, this can be me, this is something I work on, sleep, on a daily basis, you know, because it affects me too. You know, my brain can just go pitching. And then what I find really helpful, definitely no phones or devices in my bedroom. But I find it really helpful to get up and just do a brain dump, and I just write all the stuff in my head, and it's almost like I'm transferring it from my brain that's going a million miles an hour onto the paper, and then I find I can come back and go to sleep a lot more easily, because I've sort of like got it out of my head.
So will you actually get up and go to another room to do that, or you've just got a pen and
paper?
You'll go to another room?
do. I've got a husband and he doesn't like me, you know. And then there's the
yes.
So certainly, I do. Ideally I wouldn't, but because out of consideration for my bed buddy, I do get up and go to another. But I get up and go to the loo, and then I'll sort of do it in one swoop. But also too, I have like just little headphones that I pop in, and I'll just listen to sort of a meditation. And, you know, I find music, so any kind of, you know, sound healing sort of music, that normally lulls me back off to sleep. But it's a practice. And I think just like we had to train our babies to sleep when they were young, you know, we have to train ourselves, because, you know, quite often we can sort of wake up and we look at the clock and it's exactly the same time every night. And, you know, we've trained our brain almost to wake up. So what we have to do is train our brain to sleep again. So,
you know, what I've found, and a lot of people have told me the same thing for them. I'm nocturnal. It seems my natural circadian rhythm is nocturnal. So for me, even if I've been up very early in the morning, if I have to get up, say for an early flight, and I'm at 4:30 or 5, so that I feel really tired all day long, at 8 o'clock at night, 7:38, it doesn't matter how tired I've been during the day, I am waking up at an increasing level. And that has never changed. I thought I would grow out of it. It just hasn't changed. So I just have not found a way, as I've heard you to say those pre-midnight hours are so important. They're my most awake hours. I don't know how to shift my rhythm. So are there ways that those of us that have that can
and you know what, this is the beauty, I think, of all of us, is we are so different. So maybe, like, if that's your thing, like, how can you then work with that? Like, maybe why change it? You know, maybe that's just the way it is for you, and we work with it. So then, you know, you've got downtime, you know, you still need to make sure you're getting that rest, but, you know, it's just maybe for you, we just need to shift the hours around a bit. And I think, you know, for some of my clients, because in the early days, and I was sort of saying, ladies, you know, we need to get into bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock. And then I had some clients, you know, and for the most part of my clients, that worked really well. And then I had a few clients, and they were like, can't do it. But they had also the luxury, or not the luxury, but just their way their body clock was, and the way their lifestyle was. And I think it's almost like they had designed their lifestyle to work in with this subconsciously. You know, they were able to sleep in longer, or, you know, not sleep in longer, but just shift that. So they were getting up later. Whereas, for me, naturally, I'm a morning person. So if I'm still in bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's sort of like, oh, what's going on? But, you know, but that's me, and I can't take what works for me and project it onto everybody. It's sort of like, okay, well, this is how your body works. So how can we just change that? So, but you can't expect to go to bed at midnight and still be able to get up at 5:30 in the morning. You know, that just doesn't work. So it's sort of like, we need to extend those sleep hours, and your day will look different to mine.
That is good advice. And I feel like the world is oriented to morning people, it seems. I've had people look at me, because I did with it when I was in a sort of corporate work. I did have an agreement with a supervisor that I would start a bit later for this reason, because I just was not getting enough sleep. But people would look at me coming in later thinking I'm lazy somehow or something, and it was a little bit tough, and it just isn't. It's just my natural rhythms are definitely shifted around. So you know, that's really helpful, talking about sleeping. You've touched on some other things with respect to the weight gain, the key drivers for that. I mean, you've talked about the insulin spiking and so on. So is that just a matter really of stabilizing the blood sugar? Are there other elements that women need to think about?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the insulin's a big one for a lot of women. The stress is also a massive one, and just changing that stress response so we're not constantly in that fight or flight mode. Certainly, you know, inflammation is a big one. So foods that, you know, have always, you know, that we would otherwise consider to be healthy might not be healthy for you, you know, and they might be triggering a low-grade inflammation because our body changes, the way we digest our food changes, our, you know, we produce less stomach acid, we have less digestive enzymes. And it could be, and a lot of women kind of get into this pattern of, you know, healthy eating. So they'll have the same thing day in, day out, you know. Oh, and I do a food sensitivity test with every single woman that I work with. And it's always interesting because it'll come up and go, oh my gosh, eggs or tomatoes or chicken or whatever it is, you know, I eat that every day. And I'm like, well, maybe because you eat it every day, your body's just built up an intolerance to it. So we need to take it out of your diet, let that inflammation settle down, let your body start to function the way it should do. And then ideally, you know, 6 months' time, when your body's sort of working a lot better, it's a lot less inflamed, we can reintroduce those foods back in. So yeah, because while you're inflamed, it's going to block that weight loss for sure.
Yeah.
So,
you know, definitely, I'm thinking as you're talking, it's probably a good idea to keep a food journal and really monitor, not just day by day, meal by meal, food item by food item, because I feel that we lead such busy lives. We've gotten really good at ignoring the signals our body sends us. And I think our bodies never lie. I think our bodies tell us the truth.
100%.
And we've learned to ignore it. It's like, I'm not paying attention to the bloating I'm experiencing right now because I've really enjoyed that bowl of ice cream and strawberries in strawberry season. You know?
I know. I say to my clients, you know, you need to listen to that little tap on the shoulder before it slaps you on the face.
That's right.
So pay attention, ladies. You have one body, and you know, and I think there's no reason for us, you know, at 50, we are not old ladies. No. You know, we have a lot of life left to live, and there is no reason really that, we've all got different things going on, but we should be energetic. We should be vibrant. Our bodies should be working the way we should be, because ideally we're living in this body for another 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So we want it to work. So, and if it's not, you know, we're good at looking after everyone else, you know, and okay, ladies, listen to this. If your dog started limping, how long before you took it to the vet?
Instantly.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And if your kid had, you know, something going on, a few days, maybe. Yep. And then us, months or years before we actually address what is going on with us. So sometimes we need to treat ourselves like our favorite pet and get our needs seen to, and sort it out. So, you know, it's certainly, we've got so much life to live, and, you know, no one is putting us at 50 years old. We are not old ladies.
Or 60 or 70 for that matter.
Like 100%. 100%. Yeah. So, you know, it's never too late to start to make a change. You know, we can 100%, you know, turn it around, and quite quickly too.
Yeah. Oh, I love that message, Kylie. That's just wonderful. And I knew this would be a wonderful interview with you. our time is coming to a close now, but I'd like to invite you to share. You've got a wonderful gift for our audience. Could you share what that is, please?
Yes, absolutely. So I've got a like a mini ebook, Is Stress Sabotaging Your Weight Loss? So in there, I have got so many ideas for you, and it, like I said, it doesn't have to be a massage or a body bubble bath or anything like that. It's things that you can do every day, simple, easy, affordable. There's really no free, most of them. And I think it's just that way that we can start to think about how do we reset that stress response. And that will have beneficial knock-on effects, not only for your weight, but also for every aspect of your health, really.
Yeah. Oh, that is so generous. Thank you, Kylie. And thank you especially, just the person you are so energetic, and you so beautifully embody the message that you're giving as well. You're vibrant, you're healthy, you're engaged. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this. I know we've all learned so much from you, and I'm very, very grateful that you took the time to share your wisdom with all of us.
My absolute pleasure, Kip. Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it.